Okay, let's start.
So
Let's
what we're
start.
doing today is we're opening a crate that hasn't seen the light of day for 50 to 75 years.
Well, you know, the interesting thing is Enquirer stopped doing letterpress in 1985. So we've already got 35 years right there. But yeah, a lot of the blocks they may have not needed since 1950, so a little bit longer. Um, and so when this came to us, it was in a series of semi shipments, 5 semis to be exact. And just as an initial way of keeping track of it, when they came in, they got a sign like this put on them so that you know. So we're doing number 98 today, um, and so I guess I'll dig into it and we'll see what we see. So um, as much as I know people like watching me pull nails and crowbar off the lid of a thing, I chose to do that earlier. Um, so at least I know that that's out of the way. Um, this is okay. Well, they're all different. As Tom alluded to earlier, you can open up a crate and find nothing but mobile oil or insurance company coloring book pages, which, well, it's not as exciting as it sounds, and it doesn't sound that exciting anyway. Once in a while, the crate has a little bit of information on it. And this one, fortunately, has a bit of that information too, but it doesn't really tell you a lot. You know, sort of like the ones over there that say wood and metal cuts. That's pretty vague. So, anyway, we're going to start with 57 FP. And I have to figure out what FP stands for. It's the name of a circus, most likely, but uh, that's about all I really know. And even that wouldn't be very helpful. So um, it's, I mean, it could be something as exciting as a heating and cooling company or a circus. And not too surprising, it is a circus. So this is the red plate for those of you who are visually impaired. The cool thing about it is it does have a little bit of a proof on the back. We really enjoy that. That's pretty good information to have. Um, and then something's been carved away on here. No idea what that's about. But anyway, so what we've got is red plate, yellow plate. In this case, it is the background block. We could have a long conversation about the idea that theoretically you go from lightest to darkest color. That has kind of been stood on end a few times with different things we've worked on. So that's color number 2 in any case. Finally, we've got color number 3. Hard to tell that is a clown. And Steph, if you want to flip it around for them, give them a better idea.
Oh, yeah.
Clown's got kind of a strange face, but pretty good teeth, it seems.
Isn't that what you always want as a good clown with teeth?
Well, right. And then a border piece to go with it. So one of the difficulties with the collection in a general way is that we don't have posters for many of these, so you don't necessarily know printing progression, nor the true shade of a given color. This is pretty great from the standpoint that we do have the image here, and you can see that knockout in the lower right side, which would be used for the individual circus. So a lot of this artwork was interchangeable in that way. That too can create confusion from the standpoint that a given tiger could be used by a number of individuals. And so you don't really know which one it belongs to. So we get a little bit of a bonus here because the Haydn Carnival, which is going to be Saturday, I guess. Anyway, not sure why that got thrown in there. It may have had something to do with it, but a lot of times when this stuff was packed up, it was just, getting stuff out of the building. Sometimes they're fire bricks. You never know what they're going to try and dump, but I'll take it. And so another one, a B.D. Cole Circus. Hard to read that backwards in this case. Okay. Moraine. All right. Well, whatever that place is. Anyway, it might give us a key for something else that we're going to print down the line. And then you have what is a print of a pretty standard clown face. We've got this from about 4 by 4 inches all the way up to 52 by 40. So this guy got around apparently.
He's like a Kilroy version.
Yeah, right. So, kind of a nice piece. No, you don't need to see that. Fragments of stuff. So one of the things that we'll begin to look at is just its overall condition. So sometimes they have been bashed or cracked or just so dried out that we need to be concerned about them falling apart. And I'm kind of glad that this one is got integrity. It isn't, it's not one that you're going to print and sell a lot of unless you put something really nice in there. But that said, so make ready sometimes comes along with it. That's what Steph is helping me with. I'll keep it, but ultimately we can't reuse that. It's great to know what are the low spots on a given block and where we might need assistance in shimming that up to height, but they change over time, or they fall apart, or they slide a little bit. So they're not really reliable in terms of really knowing that it's going to work for you. All right, I'll get rid of this one. Okay. We'll move on to number 2.
Ooh. We have also looked at some real treats that we've been finding over the last couple of weeks and months as we unpack the collection. So Jim and I can handle only so much of the 48-degree cold back here in storage. So we pulled some treats out, and after we open another one of these, we will move to some of the treasures that we have here. Ooh, he's opening it. First time ever.
So, again, those of you who maybe have not seen this before, this was a typical way for them to keep this thing intact. Wrap it with a rope or a twine. Sometimes they would put the number of the given poster on it. This case, looks like 60 UP. And while around here that means Upper Peninsula, I think that may be wrong. But anyway, we'll see what's inside. Okay. It's another circus poster. That's all right.
Who would have guessed?
Right. First up, a magnesium plate. And, the key block, most likely, it appears to be like a sky view of a circus layout. And not a lot of information on the back of this one, other than there's green in there somewhere. So there's also, these cuts here, which probably indicates that text would have fit in there that was interchangeable. In other words, something like Enrique's Circus as opposed to Carol's Circus, something like that.
Some crowd call out there, Jim, making
Just
sure they're still awake.
Just a little. Okay, so again, we get really lucky.
Paul's asking if it's maybe a midway scene.
Well, we'll show you. Okay, this one was put away wet, which, you know, you don't even want to do for horses, but so yes, it is a midway scene. It's the circus main entrance, and there isn't a circus identifier from that Barnum and Bailey standpoint, but you can see that broad upper yellow area where you could put in the name of your circus. But while this is obviously a compromised poster, having the color scheme is really great. And, you know, there's a lot of green in there, and typically they did not print green. They would print yellow either first or second with blue over the top. But it even has the number of the poster, which can be helpful going forward. Okay, so we'll come back to that. The red plate is in a few sections, this being the top half.
Not much on there.
Not much on there. And the bottom half. But, you know, when you're wrapping a poster with a border, you want that block there so that it just fills that space. It's furniture in that point. So it also says red number 3, so that that may help. And of course, because I just got done saying that typically they weren't running green, they were running blue and yellow, we of course have the green plate. So it was done that way. Always helpful to know, simply because, again, it goes back to the process of the colors run. In some cases, you get that information, which becomes really helpful as a printer. Number, I don't know if you can read that well, it says number 2. So we can only assume that you run it second.
And I will say, Paul Pignato is on the call, and he is the one who has been coming to Hamilton and helping with the entire process of unpacking these and getting them into Past Perfect, our organization process. So Paul, you can also speak up if there's anything. I saw some questions about if this was common imagery for a midway scene, like the perspective that we're seeing.
Yeah, yeah. And so that in itself is a interesting point, because I have seen similar posters from Globe Chicago. So, you know, it was very common to sort of illustrate the circus that way, where you've got that sort of sky view of it, and then you use this big yellow area in order to be specific in terms of you know, place and the name of the circus. But again, they've written rather large for us, number 1, so that always helps. And then again, there are the rules to go with it. So,
yeah, it's kind of interesting because sometimes, even though we're used to a traditional print order of yellow, red, blue, it's good to get that reminder of what the print order is, because sometimes they try to create third colors and you actually have to print red first. And we found examples of that. So it's always nice to have that guide.
Example of what Paul's talking about kind of occurred in a conversation between he and I this week. He was talking about a Jimmy Lynch one sheet poster, and he was asking where the orange plate was, not the red plate, but the orange. What had happened when Jim Sheridan and I printed it was that we put the yellow on first, and then we came over it with the red plate. We began to realize that there were details of the yellow that were being wholly blocked out. The thing about these printers is that they typically were never using transparent ink. That was the only way we could actually make the poster succeed at that point, was to try and make the yellow more transparent, to let that yellow show through, which then created an orange looking plate. So Paul, having the The poster on file at his place is trying to figure out the coloring sequence. And of course, to him, it looks like you have yellow, blue, red, orange, and black, when in fact, that's a nice illusion that you want to give to the viewer, but not to the guy who's doing the cataloging. So always good to know when there are variations. And so using that common knowledge of going lightest to darkest is not appropriate in this case. If we run it again, we'll do something that is rarely done, which is to run red before yellow, simply because it does create the appropriate effect and reveal all the details within it. I haven't had time to try that yet.
Yeah, we found it super interesting because if you print the wrong color order, they were so clever with the design that if you print the wrong color order, you're actually hiding details. And what Jim's talking about is not only that orange, but also there's almost, in a sense, these racing stripes on the side of Jimmy Lynch's car. If you print red over, well, I don't know if I have it right or not. If you print it in the wrong order, you don't see those stripes.
Exactly.
And so it's, you kind of learn by doing, really. But when they number it, then we have a hint.
Mm-hmm. And it really does go back to the artistic knowledge and the color knowledge, as well as the printing knowledge of the artists who were creating it. They were maximizing the blocks with the minimum amount of colors, and that varied. It wasn't as though they always worked in a particular sequence. If the sequence needed to be changed around, then that is what they were going to do. Now, we could move on to another one here, or we could go into the warmer part of the museum. What happened is we emptied out a crate, and we haven't really had time to assess what is in there. What I do know is that it was pretty cool, and there's a lot of pieces that we could show off to everybody. What time are we at, Steph?
We're at 12:22, and of course we have another and more. You want to do one more and then move on? I'm curious as to the skinny one, but I'm gonna bet it's circus.
All right. It is heavy.
We don't want you guys to freeze in there.
Well, you got a little peek on the outside.
Yes.
And there are treats. I've seen them. They're really good.
Right.
Enrique's saying he's fine where we are.
He's probably got a t-shirt on.
And thanks for letting me spotlight you for a bit, Paul. I know we didn't ask you, but having you on screen is nice to see.
Well, thanks. I don't mind commenting.
Yes.
I wish I was there, actually. It's frustrating not being able to dig in like that, but eventually.
We wish you were here too, because then we'd have vacuumers. No, we'd have Tom
Thanks.
Walker, the vacuumer, to be here.
Okay. Kind of a banner style piece, long and skinny basically. And while those two were somewhat standardized in terms of that size, like a window card or a one sheet poster. So we're looking here at two pieces of the yellow.
Oh, interesting.
And what I am thinking here is that when this is printed, this is quite possibly at the bottom. Could be at the top. But the point there is that what you're creating is a text field, okay?
Nice.
So if there was an extra chunk of each color, that would be different, because then perhaps the scene needed those different colors. But I don't see that yet. So here comes the red. And it is basically the same size as the yellow without the add-on. And that's what sort of takes me to that idea of a given text field. That could also be used between a number of different ones. So on the back, no information that's useful other than knowing that, Well, the Miller brothers cuss. I guess that's what that means. But anyway, nothing we can use in terms of information about this piece.
Those Miller brothers would fit in here.
Damn right. Okay. Okay, and now our key block, which is blue. So what do we have? We have a woman standing on a horse's back. Pretty common theme.
Breaking through the paper.
Right. And
The bareback rider.
yes. Well, and she's not really riding, is she? If she's standing on the horse. This is kind of fun. There was obviously some information that fit into here. And just to close the gap, they shoved some furniture in there because, as you can imagine, you're putting pressure on here with your coin to try and tighten up the block. You don't want this area to be squeezing and putting pressure over here. But, you know, this looks familiar. This looks like something that we may actually have a poster of.
Mhm.
This box has nothing in terms of interior information. What we knew is whatever was written on the top, that it was number 61P. Again, I don't know. But still, the blocks are in pretty good shape. You know, you begin to see a little bit of areas where there may have been cracks or low spots. You know, that's what you begin to assess. That initial cleaning and photographing doesn't yield whether or not this thing actually needs a lot of make ready because it's so low or not. So, okay, 3-color banner piece, and kind of interesting that they had the yellow there, even though we don't have much to go on here.
Somebody's asking where it might have been used. And I'm assuming, like, where do you mean the placement of those? Yeah, Hans is asking, like, ooh, look at that.
So perhaps not frameable, but on the other hand, this is wonderful information for us because it tells you a lot about the registration and the specific kind of blue, right? How soft or dark is it? Have they added much to the red? This yellow looks somewhat pale. Granted, this is probably 70 years old, so that's going to happen. But I think that, you know, what my guess is that the information would be put at the bottom, but I've seen both. So it's not one of those situations where you can say this absolutely, you know, was done on the top or the bottom. But what I think we can say pretty safely is that it was merely for the information.
Looks like she's
Right.
bursting through a ring or something. Is that
Yeah,
right?
maybe one of those paper hoops, you know,
Yeah.
which was cheaper than a ring of fire, I suppose.
Yeah, insurance-wise, at least.
Well, yeah, yeah. So, you want to take a walk?
Yeah, I think so. Tom was
Alright.
asking if there's been anything found in numbering systems and ledgers or correspondence with the circuses or promoters that were ordering these posters.
Really good question. Now we had initially gotten something like 70 letters from Enquirer to various circus owners. So there's some that are quite interesting, you know, like Ringling writing to Charles Anderson at Enquirer. So those are kind of nice, but we did donate those to the Newberry Library in Chicago with the idea that we get to look at them whenever we want. And then of course we have copies. But one of the things that I had found just stuffed in a crate or in between blocks was an entire listing of the various shows. So we can go out and then I'll grab that and give you a look at that because it's cool just for the penmanship.
Sweet.
Okay.
Okay, we're going on a walk, so if you get easily seasick, mind yourself.
Hey, yeah, if you don't mind me adding to what Jim just said, and kind of answering Tom's question, if you notice, Jim was reading out like 61p, 60up. We found a coding number system on a lot of the stock poster designs. And then I believe, Jim, I've seen in one of those registries where they're ordering design 50up and design. So there is a scheme there. I don't know if we've researched it enough or looked into it close enough to determine that, but we try and capture that data if we can.
Right. And, you know, I mean, it makes sense that you'd have an abbreviated system for those things. Paul and I have had some of the most ridiculous conversations ever having to do with how to describe a given poster. And I would say, well, it's kind of a leaping tiger. And Paul would say, no, it's kind of pawing. And we actually have a leaping tiger, which is different than the seated tiger or the kneeling, you know, anyway. The numbering's a good thing. So what we've got here are a couple of product bins, as we call them, things that we took from the old Hamilton factory. And so what we've uncovered is, you know, as random as possible, but really, really exciting. So I'm just going to begin showing them to you. We'll put them on the table so that you can look at the panorama when we're done. I get the feeling that this was something of a theme-based one. And so we know we had some seasonal things like Christmas, which will show up. That devil is quite interesting. He's a little less detailed than Reefer Madness, but a little angry. Well, no, not less angry. An excellent partner to that skeleton there.
Isn't that great? Sorry, I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah, nice teeth, big forehead. Well, not actually a whole lot of forehead. So sadly, this cat has lost a back leg. Oh well. Maybe we can do something about that. That is actually Frankenstein with a noose around his neck, I'm pretty sure. We may have a larger one there. But, you know, one of the things that we can do is create proofs of these, and then you could actually go into Illustrator or Photoshop, outline them, and then make that missing one or that damaged one. Or perhaps you'll actually come across a cat that doesn't have one leg missing. So
there are already requests for t-shirts, so we will we are making note of that. I will say, Zanab and Brad, I saw a couple questions from you, so you can keep showing, but we'll make sure we ask those.
Okay. Nice ghoulish character, skeleton with a hood or something.
That looks like part of one of the ghost shows.
It does.
Ooh.
I don't know what is that?
A lady hair. She's
Oh,
bent
yes.
over.
Oh, sure. Oh, you know what? I know where she belongs.
Yeah.
She is actually, sadly, from a cautionary tale. Sometimes we think that cautionary tales were just a way to get B movies past the censor, but I believe what that woman is experiencing is the downside of drinking too much, gambling with souls, perhaps, or something like that. We have
Women in disgrace.
quite possibly.
We've got lots of those around here.
Yes. Now, this woman who is having a really good time with 4 snakes, pardon me.
Somebody's calling. They're so
There we
excited
go.
about this.
I know, it's
snake
probably in
lady.
order. Now, this comes in 2 sizes, and I actually pulled one out because I would like to see what that looks like on paper. So we can do that later if we've got time.
Ooh, yeah, we often have 2 sizes of the same design.
Right, you know, whether one is for a window card and another one might be for a poster or something like that. Chick breaking open an egg. So we've rather quickly gone from snakes to Easter, I suppose.
Okay. So I'm gonna go back to those couple of questions I saw earlier.
Okay.
And well, one was, what's a ghost show?
Was what?
What's a ghost show?
A ghost show?
Thank you.
They've got reality TV shows about that stuff. I don't think they're legitimate, but okay, this is sort of the downside, you know. A boxer that needs to be glued back together, but actually it's a pretty good break in terms of being able to fix it. So this too comes in a couple of sizes, but there is very nice detail in that. So you can see roughly, I don't know, it's about 18 inches square, something like that. We have actually looked around enough to have thought of, I think, Rocky Marciano. Tom, do you recall that conversation?
Or is it Joe Louis?
I don't think so.
Ah,
But it is interesting that when you look up, I believe, Marciano, that the face is quite similar. So this is the second color to that, but pretty exciting. And then on the back, absolutely no information at all. So
So one of the questions was, is there a lot of overlap of images between Globe and Enquirer? Like, are we seeing similar images between the two?
not a lot of overlap, and it comes back to printers specializing in different things, and the customer base of the Cincinnati printer was different than the customer base of the Chicago printer. One example of that is that you have a lot of horses in the Cincinnati collection because they're across the river from Lexington and Kentucky and Horseland. And so you tend to see that. In Globe, you had a tendency to see a lot of interesting Chicago-based musicians, for example. And so there's a little bit of overlap, but their subject matter was different. So.
And then one more question is,
Sure.
Zen, and maybe I might need some clarity on this. Zen asked, would they have any specific percentage of color value used in the circus posters and the branding? And
I'm gonna have to think about that.
Yep. Like, do you mean what colors were common, Zen, or is there a different part? Is there more to your question? Oh, there's your Frankenstein.
Yes, it is. A little easier to see in this one because the wood's cleaner. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how to answer.
That's okay. I think we can keep peeking. I'll let you
Okay.
know if we see anything.
All right. So again, one of the issues that you come to here is you look at the warp in this thing, and there is no safe way to print that. There's times where we would certainly try running it the other way if that would put less tension on it, but this being a crown as opposed to a convex, which I'll illustrate shortly, it gives you the idea that there's no way that you can work with this unless I have had success with hydrating blocks. And by that, I mean that I would put it over the top of a tray of water, cover it in plastic, and we've had success in them straightening out after a few days of absorbing that moisture. So even one of the reasons why everything is in the unheated storage has to do with the fact that the relative humidity is higher in the unheated place than the heated one. It is, it's one of those downsides of living in Wisconsin in the winter. A good sized pumpkin, or a really good sized tomato, I suppose, but I think it's a pumpkin. As a matter of fact, I think somewhere I have the stem that goes with it. So this is your orange, and then you would have that green or tan colored stem that goes along. All right. So these printers were not sentimental. And what I mean by that is when a job was done, regardless of how nicely you had carved that image for them, they might decide that it needed to be repurposed. And we've seen a lot of that simply from the standpoint that you would have a block that was cut and then it would be turned over and cut again. That damage is not that bad. Now, this is one heavy duty type case. So what is this? Maybe 3 by 2, something like that. They decided that they would use it for type, right? French antique, Norwich, Gothic, whatever. The thing of it is, it used to be somebody's legs. If you are familiar with Hatch show print, you know that Corey Wozniewski printed this beautiful 3-sheet baseball player, probably from around the turn of the century, one of the oldest pieces in their collection. And so when you see something like this, it kind of breaks your heart, right? Because they obviously chopped it up. And what if it was 4 inches too long? Well, you throw it away. So this helps. This particular type case is actually not a bad portrait. I kind of like the scroll work near my left hand there, but you know, you can see there was some serious detail. Maybe I'll come even closer because even within that hair, you get the feeling that there could have been another color. We've got a football player that is just as big, and while we've tried to put them together, it's not all there. So
Hey, can you hold that one up again? Thank you. Baseball player?
yeah, with a bat over his shoulder.
I'm
I mean,
taking notes, thanks.
Maybe he's just storming the White House. I'm not sure. No, sorry, not to get political.
I work real hard to keep this, and you just blow it out of the water.
It just comes out. This is the torso of that player, baseball player. And you know what we could do?
It looked like you were holding up an x-ray machine.
I know. Okay.
Set it down
Well, we could try.
on the ground. I can hold the computer up.
So that's kind of nice to have that much. But those leggings that you saw do not belong to this, belongs to a football player. And he's obviously a lot bigger than this guy. So the idea that you would destroy the artwork in their mind was somewhat insignificant. They needed a shelf. And then, of course, the other unfortunate part is that in using it for a type case, sliding it in and out of a cabinet for 50 years does not do much for the detail of it. So I think I have this. Yes, I do have this the right way up. This is the football player. We don't have his head, which is sad. It takes a lot away from the piece if you try to print it, you
Could
know.
be an exquisite corpse book.
Well, yes. I don't know who besides Hatch could work on it with us, but yeah. So it's not an uncommon thing. The shelving units at Hatch were mostly old blocks that were no longer useful. And so you see that they were doing pretty much whatever they needed to do.
couple good questions in the chat, if you don't mind.
No,
my-
no,
Great.
please.
So would you consider deconstructing the cases to print the blocks?
Absolutely. I've already dumped out the type, so yes.
And then a couple of good questions about process. No, that way you can see me. So a couple
Uh-huh.
good questions about process. One was, are they using pantographs to create the shift? Like if you have the big Frankenstein and the little Frankenstein. And then another one after this.
Well, they aren't using a pantograph, and there's an interesting name that escapes me now that I'm pretty sure they would have used. Hatch has got the information on this as well, and it's got a name like a radiograph or something, but in essence, it's something like a projector where you can take an image and then they just simply move it back or move it forward to make it smaller or larger and then retrace it. So it isn't as precise as a pantograph. The other thing about the pantograph is that we have a hard time imagining them even cutting the 3-foot type.
Mhm.
And so the machine itself just is not big enough to have one sheet block 26 by 40 next to one sheet pattern. And even on a pantograph, while you can cut 1-to-1, it's preferable to cut slightly reduced.
And then just the other question was about the carving marks on the baseball and football player. Looked to be hand carved versus pantograph.
Yeah,
Correct?
yep. That's a good eye. And let's see, the head, well, oh, here. This one is pretty great because as we have looked at, I'm just gonna come way in here.
That's good. You can sit it
Um,
on the table if you want.
There we go. So one of the things we found about Enquirer is they used both what you would maybe call a ruling machine, an engraver's ruling machine, for very consistent lines that you could cut in a given direction. In other words, you could cut the image and there we are. These marks could be extremely uniform. Or in this case, you can see that they are not so much casual as they're done to make the shading specific. And so you begin knowing that it's quite likely that there was an overlapping color, because then that cross-hatching effect can create the nice illusion of other colors, like the tiger piece that is up on the wall. But there's some pretty nice work there, and this one looks exclusively hand, because if it was at all routered, this would not show the strokes of the chisel. This would all be very flat. Steph will show you a really great example. What she's pointing to is where the blade came down and then they began working their way in. This being cut everywhere means it was wholly hand carved. It doesn't date it for us. The uniform of the ball player might be a better example of figuring that out. We do know that hand carving at Enquirer ended in 1931. So there is only that to go by, and they opened in 1895. So we got a window. That's about it.
Yeah, that was really good. I like to see that mark of the maker. It tells you a lot more about it. So we have about 10 minutes.
Okay.
It is up to you.
Yeah, I'll show you the snake lady. And I've got a larger one that I'm trying to get an image of.
Put her on press for now, and then we can move it.
I'm thinking at the moment that somebody asked me a while ago about what a ghost show was, and I didn't really give a very good answer.
I think Paul helped too with some of in the chat.
Sometimes a ghost show was something of a seance. And so you would have this sort of speaking to the spirits kind of thing, right? Where they would call up your dead relative and you could talk to them, or they would send messages. And I really wish I could have attended one of those because it would have been kind of interesting.
Is this a new Ways Goose event?
Well, it could be. I think as a
seen what you-
printer, yeah, absolutely. Why wouldn't you not want to have? Maybe it could take the place of the quiz portion of the show. We could have the dead could answer your questions instead of people from the audience. This block is in fairly good shape, but there's things that I am seeing that concern me near the foot. While it doesn't look too bad, I can see that it actually looks like it was almost pushed down. There's areas around the snake's head that look like they got beat up a little bit too. So I think we will see, or we won't see, some of the detail there. I'm not going to try and tell you this has never been printed before, but it wasn't printed before this morning. The thing about it is I'm always oiling with mineral oil first because I've got to soften up those blocks. It's just, it's too risky to doing damage if I don't. As spontaneous as we like to be, if you all get to watch me bust a really nice piece, that doesn't play well with me,
Then you're busted.
Yeah, those are the people I work for, right?
Ooh, can I come closer for the reveal?
Oh, yeah.
Great.
I want to burnish her foot a little bit to see if I can get that in. Not bad, not bad, not bad.
That's great. That texture on the suit.
Yeah, I want to. It looks like she's got scales for
Yeah, it
skin.
does.
Well, in certain areas. Okay, the head of the upper snake, somebody's been beaten up on.
It's nice to see the line quality, like where you were pointing out the feet.
Yeah.
Mm.
So that head of the snake is going to need to be dealt with. You can see the detailing is just not there. She does seem happy to be coiled around 4 snakes. But I guess that's what people used to do for fun.
Yeah. There wasn't the internet. You had to find something.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
There were no ham hangs.
No.
I might hold up it's interesting to see the size.
Of the mini snake girl.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's cool.
Mm-hmm. So, the thing that we can do, as I say, is if I really think that I need that block, we can scan it and then make a surrogate, I guess you would say, or a copy of it, because then that allows the block to retain its integrity. One of the things, again, regarding Hatch is that they were continuing to use these blocks over and over again. And the idea was that the natural attrition, wear, whatever you want to call it, is something that would naturally occur. But Hatch has been around so long that they are actually becoming more museum-like. And so we get to learn a lot of things. And one of the things you want to think about is even if a great poster like Jimmy Lynch and his Death Dodgers is great to print, you're going to lose something. And so you want to be really thoughtful about doing more than an initial run and getting good proofs. So the creation of the separations to have really good copies for that future use is very important. And then as the museum works to get an online catalog, again, working with Paul, we try to get him, if possible, the original poster, the separations of each color, and then the composite that we create. So, that isn't too many times to be running something through the press, but, every once in a while you're kind of tempted to run that again. So I'll show you one that I'm afraid I will not be reprinting, since we've been on the subject of ghost shows. So this is the middle of a ghost show poster. If you aren't sure what you're looking at, maybe we can enlarge the writhing bodies there are what make up the skull. And I know that this was a ghost show because we've got the original in this case. But I'm trying to remember. I know it was scary, and I don't know, there were some great adjectives along with this poster that it was uncanny, I know that. But anyway, so this is basically the bulk of this with the text on the right and left. It was printed on a one-sheet piece, 2640, and then it had this great border. So
Amanda Mello and all, I see your request for shirts. It's been noted.
so the
Thank
border that you need for a ghost show. Yeah, I know this isn't not great.
We can move. Yeah, can you guys see
We've
that?
got skeletons with knives piercing them. Maybe I need to.
Let's go back over to our original spot if that's
All
okay.
right. Yeah,
It'll be a lot easier to see with the light over here. We had a nice raking light. There we go.
Okay. Helpful. Skulls with knives through them, and shrunken heads, because that's another big part of a ghost show, I guess. These are magnesium, or nah, I would say zinc. They're old and quite heavy and thick. We've got some really poor proofs. We didn't have much time, but you get to see kind of interesting borders that go along with it. And then I'll have to get a better proof of those shrunken heads. That's not very revealing. So, but that particular skull has such a warp in it that I don't see that I can comfortably print that. This thing rocks. I don't know if you can tell. Yeah, that'll give you an idea, right? So I can try printing it this way because sometimes the cylinder will allow it to adjust. We've learned not to lock things tight, certainly not on the first runs of these blocks, because you want to give them that little bit of integrity to keep the integrity, I should say, by moving slightly.
So there are a couple of questions.
Ready.
Great. Somebody wants to know, do we oil the blocks just when we're printing them, or do we do it more often, or what kind of regimen do we have for that?
We oil them before, we will oil them afterwards. If the time is there, you could just oil them every time. If I print a block, there's some that I've printed 3 or 4 times because they're in such good shape, but I'm oiling them before and after every printing. Mineral oil is great. It's a nice lightweight oil. It does not go rancid like others do. And but the thing about it is it has a tendency to penetrate in such a way that it's not sitting on the surface, and therefore it needs more applications. But you almost can't oil these enough, because they are so dry.
Great. I think one more about the blocks themselves. Are they on end grain or long grain? Mika, and how would you go with that?
Yeah, they're almost exclusively long grain because they are so large. You know, you can figure that out with a 26 by 40 because if the tree was, you know, bigger than this, right, and you're cutting it that way, that would be a real problem. And you know, just because the yield is so much higher, what you find in the larger ones is they're like big type. They are planks that are glued up in many cases, well, almost all cases, but they do tend to be almost always long grain. And if you look back far enough, you can see that Barnhart Brothers in Spindler was selling wood blocks from Hamilton to everybody, and they were primarily birch and basswood. Um, at times you could get maple blocks, and we do find every once in a while you're moving these and they're quite light because of the nature of that wood, but you know, you come across that maple and it weighs twice as much. But that would have been a rather expensive wood, and I'm making something of an assumption here, but it's almost like, are you going to get a magnesium cut or a copper plate? Well, you get the more expensive wood if you're planning to use it over and over and over again.
Great.
It's also better for certain details, but from what we've seen, you can cut birch and basswood incredibly sharp. But since it came up,
Of course. Ooh.
we have printed this before. And so you are looking at a circus, a woman in the foreground, and then you've got the crowd scene and things like that. But where my left hand is are some cloud lines that are, I would almost say, delicate. They're so thin. And we know that, let's say you're looking at a Roman style of type where you have thicks and thins, those thins are pretty damn strong. This is incredibly strong as well. And it's also heavier than almost all the other ones. So when you had delicate lines, going to a more expensive wood was certainly the option.
Great.
So there you go.
I saw a couple of good questions. I was gonna wrap up. It is 1 p.m. But I figure we'll stick around for a couple more minutes, and that way, if you don't mind answering a couple more questions, we're getting into some good nitty-gritty stuff.
Yeah.
Which is why we're here. So one of them was asking if is another reason to use the mineral oil because it doesn't polymerize or harden like linseed oil, which I know we have a specific reason why we don't use linseed oil. Because it can combust if not stored correctly. So, but is that another reason maybe to use mineral oil?
It is, but it's also a really good question because when you research oils that are ideal for wood, linseed oil and tung oil are at the top of the list. One of the issues with linseed oil is that it also can sometimes dry with a fairly tacky feel to it. And so while it may be good for oiling up a piece of wood, like a table, it's not so good with something that you plan to ink again. And like Steph said, linseed oil is combustible. And so, you know, it'd be like sort of coating gasoline lightly on all of your, it does seem like it comes with its own issues, despite being probably better as a wood preservative than mineral oil.
And people are asking, somebody called it gummy.
Yeah.
And you talked a bit about the woods though, already about what stock they were using.
Right,
So.
right. The fact that they're primarily birch and basswood with the occasional hardwood thrown in.
Sweet. I think that is amazing. I'm going to say thank you all for joining us today. We always love to see you on these ham hangs every week. And when we can share what's happening in the collection, that's always important.
Yeah,
That's a big part
yeah.
of it. So
Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
I'm gonna remove our spotlight and go back to the whole big view so we can see all your smiling faces.
There we go.
Yeah. Thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you.